Welcome to Mid-Level Media, everybody, and it is time for my review of the Colombian Classics 4K edition of Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Stay tuned. Alright guys, so let's get into this unboxing. So we have Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, directed by Stanley Kubrick, starring Peter Sellers and George C. Scott. This is of course a part of that Columbia Classics Collection Volume 1. You cannot buy this individually as of right now. It has to be with that set. I do not know if Columbia has any plans to release these individually in the future, but as of right now, they have to be a part of the set. So one of the biggest selling points to me for this set was that every single movie in it had its own individual slipcover, although they are not the traditional slipcover with the 4K logo at the top. They're kind of their own thing, which I kind of like in a way. But right here you have the image of Peter Sellers as Dr. Strangelove on the cover. You have the title, you have the cast, you have some cool kind of images from the movie in black and white behind it. Right here, let's look at this spine. That is a pretty awesome looking spine. You have the Ultra HD on the spine. You have the Columbia logo right there. Let's go ahead and flip it over. Really cool image from the film. Has so much more context now that I've actually seen it. But the guy riding the bomb down to the ground, and you have a quote down here from the movie as well. Arguably the best political satire of the century. Right down here, you have the year the film was made, and we'll zoom in on that. But let's go ahead and take it out of this slipcover. And we actually have, see, underneath the slipcover, you actually have your traditional 4K case right here with the 4K Ultra HD, so that's cool. This is, of course, the iconic poster from when it was released. There was a lot of controversy involving this poster is what I got from in these special features. But yeah, right there, really cool looking cover. Right here, Dr. Strangelove. I like that they use different font and coloring right there for that title logo. You have the Ultra HD Blu-ray. Let's go ahead and flip it on the back, and we'll zoom in on these special features. That's on the back right here. Zoom down, high dynamic range. Down here, you have the cast list we'll zoom in on. Up here at the top, you have the synopsis, and you have a image from them all in the war room, trying to figure out what to do. And yeah, guys, let's go ahead and open up this case. Look at it, and yes, we have some discards. So the 4K Ultra HD has the poster, the cover on it, which is cool. This one, the Blu-ray disc, has the image from the back that I talked about earlier. So I'm not sure if this was the image that was used on the traditional Blu-ray release that came out back in 2009. If that's the same disc or not, but really cool that they have, actual disc art and images from the film. So let's go ahead and close this up, guys, and I'm going to give you guys my thoughts on the film and the overall presentation and the special features in my next segment. Stay tuned. Welcome back, guys, and thank you for sticking around for the review portion of this video. And before I move on with my review of Dr. Strangelove, I'm going to go ahead and ask that if you haven't yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and become a subscriber of the Mid-Level Media channel. I do all kinds of great stuff on this channel with physical media and just a lot of physical media-based content revolving around the newest 4K and Blu-ray releases. I even do a show every single Monday called the Physical Media Report, where I discuss all the latest news, stories involving new 4Ks and Blu-rays and everything coming out this week, and just all that fun stuff on this channel. So if you like physical media, if you're a fan of physical media, go ahead and consider becoming a subscriber of the Mid-Level Media channel. And go ahead and hit that like button right down there. You see that like button? It's this little thumbs up thing that's right down there. Just go ahead and hit that once for me. And we'll move on with the video, and comment down below if you have seen Dr. Strangelove and just what are your thoughts on it. Before I give my thoughts on the film, I'm going to go ahead and read a brief synopsis of it. So U.S. Air Force General Jack Ripper goes completely insane and sends his bomber wing to destroy the USSR. He thinks that the communists are conspiring to pollute the precious bodily fluids of the American people. So this movie is starring Peter Sellers and George C. Scott, and it's directed by Stanley Kubrick. Now, I have not seen enough Kubrick films. I'm going to be honest. There's a lot of gaps when it comes to Kubrick. Of course, I love The Shining. I love 2001: A Space Odyssey. I've seen Eyes Wide Shut, but this is actually my fourth Kubrick film. I have still not seen a lot of his more iconic ones like A Clockwork Orange or Full Metal Jacket. Like some of those bigger movies of his I have not seen, so I'm looking to go back and kind of expand my Kubrick knowledge. And what better way to do it than with this Colombian Classics release of Dr. Strangelove? And I'm going to tell you right now, guys, I really enjoyed this movie. This movie, I had no idea. I knew it was kind of comedic in tone and it was a satire, but I didn't know it was more of a spoof, kind of on the level that it is. And this movie really is kind of a spoof movie about the Cold War, about everything that was going on back in the 60s. And it's very fun. It's very unorthodox, very offbeat, has a weird sensibility and sense of humor about it. And I can only imagine that a filmmaker like Stanley Kubrick could bring this type of film to the public in the way he did in the 60s. And I could see this movie being extremely controversial back in the day. But the thing about this movie that I think is so incredible is the fact that it feels so relevant. Like the comedy in this movie, it feels so relevant today as I'm sure it was back in the 60s. And maybe that's because of the iconic line, war never changes. It's always the same. The themes of war, the things that we have to do, it all revolves around the same thing, the same themes. And I also got a lot of Apocalypse Now vibes from this movie, in the sense that you have the crazy commander that's like going insane and making all these rash, crazy decisions. And of course, he sends all of the planes in to bomb all these different points in Russia. It's kind of about America, getting on the phone. They're in the military room set up, and they're getting on the phone with the Russian leaders. They're saying, hey, our general, they just sent all these planes in to bomb you guys, and, we need you all to help us stop them. Go up there, take all the planes out if you want to. It's like America working with the Russians to stop them from bombing them because of this unfortunate situation. The comedic beats in this movie and the offbeat sensibilities of everything that's going on, it just plays for some really hilarious moments in the film. And I mean, Kubrick's craft, his attention to detail, overall direction is very apparent. And this is the early part of his filmmaking career. He had only done a couple films before this, The Killing, and I can't think of the other movie offhand. But this is the very early part of Kubrick's career, and he wrote this film. I think it was based on something, some kind of a short novel or something, maybe a novella. But he wrote the film, he directed the film, and it feels so. In a way, it feels like Kubrick, but it feels so different than anything else I've ever seen from him. Like I said, I've got a lot of stuff to get into from him as a filmmaker, but it just goes to show you, like, why this guy is so revered like he is, like making movies like this, like 2001, like The Shining. He's just so different, and he tackles so many different subjects and themes, and he does such a phenomenal job with this film. Then, of course, you have George C. Scott, which I'm not as familiar with George C. Scott and his filmography, but he's a really interesting performance here. And for what I know, he's most known from the movie Patton, which I have not seen, but apparently he's very gruff and very rough in most of his other roles and in life in general. But he is really a primary source of comedy in this movie. He does a lot of things that are pretty hilarious in it, with his over the top kind of selling of particular moments and his outlandish behavior. And I really enjoyed his performance. I'm looking forward to kind of looking at more of his body of work as far as the George C. Scott performances. Peter Sellers, man, he is the star of this movie. This guy is doing 3 different performances, and yet another actor I'm not really familiar with a lot of his work. I really need to go back and just watch more classic films and get in tune with some of these performers, but he's definitely on my radar now because just the job he does in this movie. He's playing 3 different characters. He's playing kind of the aide to the general that's setting off all these bombs or sending all these planes in to bomb everybody. He's really hilarious in that role. He's playing the President of the United States, and he's also playing the character Dr. Strangelove, which, believe it or not, was probably my least favorite of all 3 of his performances, just because it was so weird and different, and I didn't necessarily find it all that humorous, to be honest. It felt like it was really... The movie does a lot of weird offbeat things. And I felt that when it started to go into the Doctor Strangelove, it was just being weird and different just for the sake of doing it. And it really didn't lend itself to any of the political commentary and satire from the rest of the film. So I didn't love the Doctor Strange character. He was fun to have in the movie, but it just didn't feel like him and his performance matched the rest of the film, in my opinion, or the brand of humor they were trying to bring to it. But Peter Sellers as the president is really funny. The initial phone call he has with Russia, where he's trying to explain to them like just what's going on in the situation, it's freaking hilarious just how they play that. off with him on the phone. You can't hear the Russian leader on the other end. You can only see him and hear his reactions to everything, and it's a hilarious scene. And there's really a lot to love about this movie. I honestly really enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to just checking out more Kubrick films. Well, let's move on to just the video transfer of this film. Of course, this movie is in black and white, and I actually think black and white lends itself to 4K pretty good. Like, this movie looks phenomenal, and I haven't seen any of the other transfers, so I don't have anything to compare it to. But from what I was reading online, it's not too much better than the Criterion release that they did back in 2016. They said it's a lot better than the 2009 version that came out, but it's not much better as the Criterion that came out. And of course, the Criterion was remastered in 4K, but it was not an actual 4K disc. This is an actual 4K disc, but it is probably, if you're going to buy Doctor Strangelove, this is probably the definitive version to watch it in. It's just, unfortunately, it's a part of this Columbia Classics set, and you can't just buy it on its own. So if you just want Doctor Strangelove, you're probably better off going with the Criterion because you can just buy that one. But it looks great. The audio is really good. That's something I really noticed in the film, is just the audio and how realistic some of those aerial flight sequences just felt. And even looked like on screen. Like, the actual flight sequences filmed back in 1963 or 1964 when this movie came out, they look really great. Just the way they move the plane through the air. And you can kind of tell, it's fake. I mean, you can with a lot of these movies, but it looked really good, and I really almost bought into that they were actually flying, that those were actual scenes with the plane in the air. And just, I think a lot of it had to do with the sound and just the wind whooshing by the planes and stuff. So it has excellent sound in it. Moving on to the special features. This doesn't really have anything new with this particular set. On the Blu-ray, you have all the special features from the 2009 Digibook release, and on the 4K, which you actually get special features in 4K, which is cool, you have all the special features from the Criterion 2016 release. So, I mean, that was only 4 years ago. I guess they felt that there wasn't any need to bring anything new to the table as far as special features because they did it 4 years ago, which I understand that, but I would have liked to see maybe a little something new. But I watched a few of them. I actually watched a lot of the interviews on the 4K with all the actors and stuff. Some really great interviews and insights into the film to check out. And the thing I enjoyed the most was the George C. Scott interview, which was on the Today Show. I watched that one and the Peter Sellers one. The George C. Scott was really interesting, though, because that guy is just a grumpy old man, and he starts going into how he doesn't like sci-fi and horror and genre films and stuff like that, which is interesting because I looked at his filmography, and he actually has some sci-fi and horror films to his filmography later on in his career, I think, after that interview, so that's kind of interesting. But yeah, some great special features. It's just nothing new that's here. So overall, guys, I really just enjoyed the film, and it's I think that Kubrick had a lot to say with this movie, and he really got his point across in making it. It feels just as relevant today as it did probably back in the 60s when it was made. So just that it just feels very timeless, and it's an excellent film that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I definitely recommend you guys checking out. The only problem is I do recommend picking up that Columbia Classics collection. So far, I've reviewed 2 of the movies, and they're both phenomenal transfers. So as I move on, I'll be able to give you greater insight on whether or not that entire set is worth picking up. But as the actual disc, as the actual Doctor Strangelove disc, I definitely give it a thumbs up, a recommendation. So another solid hit for the Columbia Classics Volume 1 edition. So that does it for my video, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video on the review of the 4K edition of Doctor Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Like I said, go ahead and subscribe to this channel if you hadn't yet. Comment down below. Go ahead and like this video for me, and we'll see you next time.